It turned out to be a story of a girl who suddenly found out that she could actually read other people's minds. At first she was excited, but eventually she ends up finding out that her crush was actually a huge pervert and at least half the class are complete idiots. As a writer, she was probably at least as good as her sister, which was pretty surprising by itself. But while the newsletter was coming along nicely, there was another sort of trouble headed my way, as I would find out soon enough. That's 2 stories out of 3. Do you think the one from Yuki will be ready soon?
Aren't you supposed to know that better? But I think she's been a lot more brighter lately.
Well, I guess it does look like that, since it seemed like her story was at least coming along nicely.
You think it's just that, huh?
She glanced at my direction while showing her trademark, that mischievous grin, which meant that she was up to no good again.
Hey, what would you say about a date?
Well, that came out of nowhere. But wait, a date with Yumi? Eh?
What's with that look? I was talking about Yuki. Don't tell me you actually wanted to go with me instead.
In your dreams. And moreover, do you really think you can decide stuff like that for her? Since asking for a date completely out of the blue was apparently normal for her, I guess I should expect anything. But as regrettable as it is, I'm not sure if Yuki would feel the same. It's times like these when I really hate my rational personality.
Hey, it's Yuki we're talking about. Do you really think she would make the move herself?
She had a point. Even in an extra convenient hypothetical setting where Yuki would actually like me, I just couldn't see her making a move of any sort. In the end, I'm not all that sure if she would have the courage to speak about it even to her sister, but still.
Anyway, you're fine with next Sunday, right? See ya for now, I'm off!
Hey, I didn't even answer yet! But there was no one to hear that, since she had already dashed off. Just what have I gotten myself into this time? Sunday came quickly, and so I found myself waiting for Yuki at the main street of this little town. There wasn't really a meeting place or a town square here, so in the end, we had agreed to meet in front of the movie theater. If you wanted to see the latest blockbusters, you'd have to take the train to the next town. On the other hand, this theater was small, with only one hall where they'd often run some old foreign films I had never heard of. The movie we were seeing today had been picked for us, courtesy of Yumi. "Romantic films are the basics of any date," she said. In other words, she probably didn't know the movie either. Either way, I was waiting, and I had been waiting for a good 10 minutes already. If it turns out Yumi had only played a prank on me, I'll be damned. But as soon as I thought of that, she finally arrived. Yuki was wearing a light blue one-piece dress that was just the right length to please the eye, while it still had a sense of purity to it. Judging from the slight blushing on her face, it might have been that Yumi had even went out of her way to pick that dress for her. Good job, Yumi! Of course, I didn't say any of that out loud, but still, this whole deal was so good, I wanted to yell at the top of my lungs and do a huge fist pump in the air right then and there.
Sorry. I'm a little bit late. I hope you didn't have to wait too long.
Nah, no problem. And by the way, that dress looks great on you.
Thank you.
How do you flirt casually without seeming like a huge pervert? I don't think I've ever really understood this much. While I kept thinking of that, the two of us bought the tickets to the movie whose title didn't really matter and picked our seats from the nearly empty hall. The movie itself turned out to be a black and white film about an unlikely couple on their way out of the country, headed for nowhere in particular, just to get away from their own lives. Not that I could have been asked to pay much attention to the film itself anyway. Afterwards, we picked a table from the local family restaurant. I was studying the menu half-heartedly when I noticed something was off. Yuki had actually taken a seat right next to me, something I never would have expected. Since the seats were basically just couches around a table, the two of us were suddenly only a few centimeters away from each other. She stared at me with a look that was somehow full of expectation. The atmosphere was broken up by the words of the waitress. You could hear a bit of irritation in her voice, but I guess you really couldn't blame her in a situation like that. After acquiring a milk coffee for myself and a fruit parfait for Yuki, the conversation shifted towards the movie from earlier. So, how was the film then?
That, the one I actually wanted to see had been running on a weekday. Hey, want a taste?
She was offering me a spoonful of her fruit parfait. Again, I had no idea Yuki could be this forward, but in a situation like this, it's not like I could have refused either. I smiled like an idiot while enjoying the sweet taste in my mouth. As there was still time, the two of us did all the stuff that couples on a date usually do. Fool around at the arcade, shop for a bit, and finally, we somehow wandered to the nearby park. Well, calling it a park would have been generous, as there were only a few benches plus a swing set and a slide. Normally, parents would bring their kids to play here, but at this time of day, it was all empty for some reason. We picked one of the benches at random and sat down. While I was racking my mind in need of some good lines, Yuki was already ahead of me.
Thank you, again, for today.
She leaned closer to me, again, with her eyes full of expectation. Well, even I could read the situation from this much, but still. I closed my eyes, since I had heard that's what you're supposed to do in this sort of situation. But she was a lot more sudden than what I had thought. The feeling on my lips was warm and soft tone. It left me wanting another, but that would have probably been too much. Afterward, neither of us knew what to say. I guess it must have been fairly embarrassing for her as well. Yuki, I guess you're pretty forward, actually.
It seems like so. I didn't even know it myself. It all became a bit weird somehow. Maybe we should call it a day.
Sorry about that. I'll walk you home then.
There's no need for that. I'll see you tomorrow at school. Bye.
Bye? I hadn't known Yuki for all that long, but there had definitely been something weird about her today. But what exactly it was? I wasn't going to ruin my Cloud 9 mood by pondering something like that. Things would work themselves out, somehow. The next day at school, just before morning class, I met Yumi again, the mastermind behind yesterday's operation. I should probably thank her. After all, things worked out a lot better than what I had expected. Morning.
Still in high spirits? It sure looked like you were having fun yesterday.
Crap. I forgot that she was also watching the whole thing, since Yuki and her share their senses as well. While it looks like she's on my side right now, I'd still rather not let her see that idiotic smirk I had on my face for the whole of the date. I guess that's true.
But you do realize that was my first kiss as well. Just how are you going to compensate for that?
Just what am I supposed to say here? It wasn't like I couldn't take it back anymore, and I'm pretty sure I wouldn't even if I had the chance. Still, it didn't really seem like she was too serious about it either. Sorry, but I'm not taking it back, no matter how nicely you'd ask.
Is that so?
She looked at me with a mischievous smirk on her face. Still, thinking back to yesterday, there was one thing that wouldn't stop bugging me. By the way, Yuki was acting a bit unlike herself that whole day. Have you noticed anything like that about her?
Of course you'd only care about her!
I didn't know the reason, but she looked absolutely furious. If class wasn't about to begin, she would have probably bolted straight out the door, or worse. But as she had no choice, her dagger-like stare would be drilling a giant hole to my back for the next few hours. So you can understand just how relieved I was when she had disappeared off to somewhere by lunch break. Maybe I could find Yuki reading in the school library right now. Hopefully, she could tell me what was actually going on. I checked the library, but my search was in vain as Yuki was nowhere to be seen. Usually she'd be here, reading some thick hardcover or scribbling in her notebook. Was she actually avoiding me, or was I just thinking about it all too much? After all that, Yumi never turned up for afternoon class, leaving me even more confused than what I already was. Left without a choice, I decided to stop by the library one more time after